highlight some of the major differences between Peterbilt 579 and the Freightliner Cascadia. Now, this is going to be in regards to the 2022 um, Peterbilt 579 I recently purchased. So the lighting here is not that great. Let's see if we can fix that. So I've driven my new truck, the 2022 Freightliner or the Peterbilt 579. I've driven it now for a week. Okay, so I've had an opportunity to evaluate it and then compare it to what a Freightliner Cascadia is like. So right off the bat, I'll say I like the Peterbilt better than the Freightliner. Um, I think the quality is much better in the Peterbilt. I could feel the quality. It's kind of like the difference between a Toyota and a Chevette, or maybe like a Trans Am convert versus a Chevette. The Peterbilt just feels like it's sportier, handles more like a sports car, has high quality like you might find in a Toyota. It's just everything about it just speaks of quality. And I'm very impressed with the truck. Now, it has a Cummins X15, whereas the Cascadia has the Detroit Diesel DD15. I will say the Cummins takes a little bit getting used to. I think it's a more high performance engine. It requires more frequent oil changes, for example. I think the maintenance interval for the Cummins is going to be around 35,000 miles between full service PM. You can get oil samples, and that will help determine how frequently you can change the oil, or maybe you can extend it based on the oil samples, for example. But DD15, you could go 75,000 miles without an oil change. Um, they both use synthetic oil, so that's not a big difference right there. But it seems like the Cummins has more torque, and I think the gear ratio in this Peterbilt is 279, which I think is lower than the Freightliner Cascadia, which means that it'll have uh, more speed on a flatter terrain. I think the higher the gear ratio, the more climbing torque it'll have when you're going through the hills. But for central US, which I drive, 279 rear axle ratio is probably ideal. The truck has plenty of speed. you know, I have to use the cruise control to control my speed on this truck because I'm not used to having a truck that can reach 75 miles an hour and not shake, rattle, and roll like that Freightliner Cascadia would. The Peterbilt is smooth. You'll go up to 75 miles per hour very smoothly. And if you're not careful, you could go beyond that. So obviously, most places you drive, the speed limit is not more than 75 unless you're in Texas, which could go up to 80. But this Peterbilt 579 can handle that speed. Although I will say the tires are rated for 75 miles per hour, so you got to keep that in mind as well. But it has plenty of speed. Uh, it's not uncommon for me to just keep the cruise control set at 70. And you come up upon these company drivers who have speed limiters at 68, for example. Um, you can just bump it up to 72, 73 miles an hour past that truck. Then, once you pass, go back down to 70 miles per hour, all very smoothly. It's not a struggle for this truck at all. It has plenty of power. So I'm very impressed with the performance of the truck. There are some differences, with the safety features. The Freightliner Cascadia, I think, has more safety features. The Cascadia has the front radar that tells you what the speed of the traffic is in front of you. So you have, a readout. They'll say, okay, the truck in front of you is doing 62. Well, in this Peterbilt, you don't have that. Now, this is the 579 efficiency model. There is a 579 performance model that will give you a better indication of how much traffic is how fast or slow it's going. It uses a bar method where it gives you like number of bars, like your cell phone gives you a number of bars for signal strength. It'll give you a number of bars for following distance, but it won't tell you what the speed is. Whereas Freightliner Cascadia will actually tell you what the speed is. So I think that's a plus for the Cascadia. The 579 doesn't have the side radar that shows you that there's a vehicle on your passenger side, whereas the Cascadia does. Uh, both of them have lane departure. I'll say Peterbilt has a small device in the windshield, center of the windshield, whereas the Cascadia has a large device in the center of the windshield, which is very annoying. But I like the Peterbilt. The cabin features are much better. The lighting is better. They're everything inside the Peterbilt makes perfect sense to me. It's like, well, this truck is engineered correctly. I don't really have a lot of fault with the design or the way it was engineered. Whereas the Cascadia, it seems like you're always in a cave. There's never enough light in the bunk area, and it just seemed like it was poor quality throughout the truck. Um, I did like the DD15 engine. I thought the DD15 engine in the Freightliner was a good engine. I didn't have any problems with the engine or transmission. I really liked the creep mode in the Cascadia when you were backing up. I really like that reverse creep mode so that you can gently get underneath the trailer or back up to a dock. In this Peterbilt, it has two gears for reverse. Uh, it's really not as slow and not as like a creep mode like the Cascadia. It feels a little bit like you're slamming into the trailer, slamming into the dock by comparison. I think they could improve in that area, to slow it down a little bit so you can be a little more precise. But that just could be me getting used to the truck as well. Maybe just take a little more repetition before I get the hang of it. I will say that the Peterbilt is a longer wheelbase. I had it parked right next to a Cascadia, and it's about a foot and a half longer, than the Cascadia. Then you put the grill guard on front of that, so now you're at least 2 feet longer than the Cascadia. That becomes an issue when you're trying to back up into spots that you normally would fit your Cascadia in, but now with the Peterbilt, it's like I need some more extra room for that. But it does turn very sharply. Even though it has a longer wheelbase, it when you're backing a trailer up, it turns sharply. So again, I think some repetition will fine tune how good you are at doing that. There's a difference in the trucks for sure. So you'll have to have some practice backing with the Peterbilt that it's a little bit longer wheelbase, turns a little bit differently than the Cascadia. This Peterbilt comes with a factory installed Thermo King tri-pack APU. The truck was built with the APU. So everything is designed and installed flawlessly. I mean, it's not a hack job that sometimes when you take your truck to Thermo King, they have to install the APU and they start cutting away. Well, this truck was designed with the APU, so it's very well positioned. Everything, all the components are nicely placed, professionally installed, factory installed, and it operates very, very smoothly. So when I compare these two trucks, I'm like, to me, Peterbilt wins hand over hand over hand. It's like every feature I look at, I like the Peterbilt better than I like the Freightliner Cascadia. It rides better. It's much smoother. It has a performance feel to it. It's kind of fun to drive the truck. It's kind of like driving a sports car. I mean, a very large sports car, but it's fun to drive the truck. Um, I don't think you could say that about the Freightliner Cascadia. The Cascadia, after driving 500 miles, wears you out. You're kind of beat up. 500 miles in the Peterbilt is perfectly fine. You can go 600 miles and still feel relatively good. It's not going to beat you up like the Freightliner. They say the Freightliner is a freight shaker, and I think it's because it's just it, it it's stiffer. It has more uh, bouncing around. For the driver, whereas that Peterbilt is a smoother ride. It's just more comfortable. And if you're more comfortable and you're not feeling worn out after 500 miles, then you're going to be motivated to keep going, which is going to affect profitability in your performance. So I look at that as a big plus. I'm like, if I compare these two trucks, I think the Peterbilt is going to be a better performing truck. It's going to generate more miles, create greater profit, more revenue, things like that. When I look at the costs, um, Peterbilt, it was more value for the dollar. You can get a truck from Crete in 2022. You can get a truck from Crete, Freightliner Cascadia, for $80,000. I think they're selling for $79,900. They were at $84,900, and they would have 400,000 miles on it. It'd have retread on the drive tires and no APU and no grill guard. I got this Peterbilt 579 with virgin drive tires, Yokohama, uh, a grill guard that I installed for extra, an APU that came with the truck, a diesel powered Thermo King Tri-Pack APU, uh, all that for 82,000. So Peterbilt 82,000 with all the bells and whistles, and a plain Jane Freightliner Cascadia with nothing for 80,000. And the Peterbilt had 50,000 less miles. So I think dollar for dollar, I think your value is with the Peterbilt, not with the Freightliner Cascadia. I would say for the Cascadia, the extended warranty is pretty good. You have Daimler EN4 warranty up to 7 years, 750,000 miles. But the key for that is you got to check the boilerplate information on your door frame and look for the date in service. And a lot of times, when you buy that truck from Crete, it's already beyond 4 years old, and you're not going to get additional 3 years of warranty. Um, you probably won't make it 750,000 miles before that warranty expires, because you'll hit the 7 year point first. It's 7 years or 750,000 miles. So if the date in service was January of 2021, it's gonna 7 years later. It's gonna be January 2027, or wait, 2028. So here you buy it, fall of 2025. You think you got 3 years warranty, you only got 2 years warranty. So you have to be very careful when you buy that truck from Crete, exactly how much warranty is remaining. By comparison, this Peterbilt had a 5 year, 500,000 mile warranty on the engine and on the after treatment system. Plus, it had 3 months remaining on the frame warranty. So, what I'll do, I called Peterbilt and I reviewed with the warranty manager the options for buying additional warranty after 500,000 miles. And they recommended National Truck Protection, the warranty program for that. They like that. So we'll go with that once we reach 500,000. But I'm only going to keep this truck up to a maximum of 600,000 miles. So we're at 355,000 right now. So you're only talking about maybe 2 years. 125,000 miles per year, 250,000 miles over the next 2 years. That's puts you right at 600,000 miles, not traded in. I already got my eye on my next truck. I mean, I just bought this truck. I'm already thinking about my next truck. I do like this truck, but I would be interested in take a look at the 579 performance model. This is the efficiency model. The performance model has fog lights, hydraulic fifth wheel release. This one does not. This does not have a hydraulic fifth wheel release. It has a sliding fifth wheel, and it has the air suspension, but doesn't have the hydraulic release. The Cascadia has hydraulic fifth wheel release, but this one does not, which is all right. It's not that big of a deal. But the 579 Performance model has that. Plus, it has fog lights and a couple other extra features. So I think my next truck would be the 579 Performance model. Um, just added luxury features. That's all. That's all really is the difference. This one's really nice, but there's another model that's even nicer. So I would be interested in the performance model for my next truck. So we'll see how that goes. But at 350,000 miles, this truck was a great value for the money, more so than the Freightliner Cascadia. There are differences, but if I had to choose between two trucks, I'd go with the Peterbilt 579 every day, all day, twice on Sunday. So I don't think there's much comparison. I think the Peterbilt is a much better truck. All right, guys, that's all I got for you. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the internet.